Brazilijoje žmonės iš tikrųjų keista, bet nežino tikrosios istorijos, iš kur atkeliavo tas statula, jie vis dar tikit, kad tai yra dovana iš Paryžiaus, ar ne?
No, they don't, exactly. You're completely right. And so, of course, I was writing about this statue. But you know, it's very interesting when you live in a country and you've lived there all your life. For example, I've lived in London for most of my life. Do I know anything about Big Ben, or do I know anything about Buckingham Palace? And so these things are just there, and you're not interested because they're just there in front of you. But there are some beautiful stories about the Cristo which are told, and I use in this story. And that is that the whole of the Cristo is covered in small triangular soapstone tiles. And the society women of the time used to go to churches and stick them on netting so that they could go on to clad the Cristo. And they used to write prayers and messages to loved ones on the back of these tiles. And so the whole of the Cristo is clad in 6,000 to 9,000 messages, which is just such a beautiful thing.
Ar jūsų knygose yra daug istorinės tiesos, ar daugiau yra fikcijos?
All the facts about the building of Christ Redeemer, e.g. the soapstone tiles, how it was done, how it was constructed, are absolutely 100% accurate. What is not accurate is the fictional characters around that, because obviously I made up the love story.
Aš iš tiesų norėjau klausti apie meilės istorijas, kurių yra pakankamai daug linijų suskynusių. Ar jas pakuždėjo kažkas, ar tai yra visiškai jūsų vaizduotės vaisius, ar girdėjot kažkokių senų meilės istorijų sustojusių Rio?
I'm not sure I should tell. But no, I think what happens to me is that the location comes first. So with Maya, it was very much Brazil and Rio that inspired me. And then after that, I sit there and I have a dictaphone because I can't sit still. I'm very bad at sitting still, so I can't type. So I have to, me and Dick, spend a lot of time talking together, and I walk and I pace, and slowly the characters start to come to me and they tell their own stories, and at that point I am no longer in control. And it really does give me sleepless nights, because it's a little bit like when I've written for a day and I have a character who has done something completely ridiculous in the plot. And it's a bit like all of us when we have a friend calling to say that they're going to go back to this, horrible boyfriend who has treated them badly. And so I'm lying there getting so angry and frustrated with one of my own characters. But they always somehow manage to sort themselves out. But I definitely, apart from the location and all the historical detail, from then the story completely flows and the characters take them over.
Kosmavelijos rajone yra namas, kurį jūs labai detaliai aprašote ir atrodo, kad jis iš tiesų egzistuoja. Ar jis egzistuoja?
It does, and I would just so love to buy it. It is the most beautiful house, and it has a very sad story, and it's completely being left to rack and ruin now. And when I went in there were squatters, and everything had been torn out. So I reinvented it. I am obsessed with buildings. I love beautiful buildings, which is why I went to the cathedral this morning. I look at architecture all the time, and so it's very, very important for me to have a beautiful building, or a building with character, where my characters live. And in fact, I think in some ways that house becomes a character in its own right.
Architektūrai iš tiesų skirta labai daug dėmesio, dabar nutolsim nuo knygos, bet turbūt reikia pasakyti tiem, kas nežino, kad jūs pati esat savo gyvenimą pati suprojektavus namą. Čia be tų 7 vaikų, knygų ir taip toliau, dar esat pastačius namą Tailande, ar ne?
Oh, I love houses. love shoes, you know, handbags, I love houses. I would like to collect as many as possible, especially if they're really old and they just need some TLC to make them better. But we live in a very, very old house. And there is a family connection, and so my husband and I felt that we should make it all better. And has anyone here read The Orchid House? I don't know how to say The Orchid House. Hothouse Flower, The Secret of the Orchid? Mm-hmm. I don't know which one it is. It was my first book, anyway, here. And in that there is a house in Norfolk where I live, and that really is my house. And so all the money I've earned actually has gone into restoring the roof and the windows and keeping the drafts out. So thanks to everybody who's bought a book here, I am now a lot warmer in my house.
Kadangi visose jūsų knygose atsiranda vietovės, kuriuose jūs gyvenat, su kuriom kažkaip vienaip ar kitaip esate susijusi, pagyvenant tose vietovėse. Aš noriu paklausti, kaip jūs įsivaizduojate, ar įmanoma parašyti knygą apie vietą, kurioje nesi buvęs?
Oh yes, probably, although I've never done it. I think I probably could, but I don't know whether it would be as good as the ones that I write, because, you know, when I go to different countries, I feel the atmosphere and the energy. You know, when you fly somewhere, and either you absolutely adore it, or you're just ambivalent about it, or in fact you don't like it. So I think it's actually essential that you should go and visit and understand and learn about the countries that you are writing about. And especially about the people who live there. That is the most important thing.
Kiek laiko praleidot Brazilijoje, kiek laiko pagyvenate?
As much time as I possibly can, because the weather is rubbish in England. And what was so nice was that when I was writing in Rio, my apartment had this little terrace. And so because I dictate, and I don't need a word processor, every morning I used to put on my bikini and go and lie on this sunbed with my little dictaphone, microphone strapped to my bikini top, you know, and lie in the sun and write. However, before you start thinking how lucky I am, the following year and the next book in this series is about my sister, and she's called Ali, and sadly she lived in Norway. So in fact, I went from a bikini to 5 thermal vests. And when I was over there, it was -19.
Kalbant apie patį rašymo būdą, kadangi užsiminėt, kad nerašot ranka, rašot diktofonu, koks yra jūsų dienos grafikas? Ar laukiat įkvėpimo, ar pasiimat diktofoną visur su savim ir rašot tada, kada norit?
No, what I do, because obviously I have all these kids, so when I am writing that first draft, I have to literally go and seal myself off, because I can't get myself into the atmosphere of the past story if I have interruptions. So I will book somewhere to go for 2 to 3 weeks, and then I will get there and I have to be inspired, because I have that 3 weeks period in which to get that first draft of the past done. And every moment is precious. And, you know, I think it's interesting because maybe if I wasn't on a schedule, I would be able to take time to be inspired. But it's a bit like any job you do, you can't wait to write that email just because you don't feel like it. You know, at the end of the day, you are there to do a job. And, you know, mine, thank God, is very pleasurable, and I never run out of inspiration. I think what does happen is that you can become very tired and exhausted. But for anyone here who actually wants to write a book, the only thing I can say to you is don't actually stop and look back at what you've written. You just need to keep going and get to the end. Because no matter how bad that story is, somewhere in there will be characters, plot, and there will be something to work with. And I think so many writers get stuck because they have a bad day and they read what they've written, and maybe it's a paragraph that just isn't, they can't describe, you know, this bottle or that book well enough. And so they stop and they delete, and then they get downhearted. So it's just really, really important to get to the end of that first draft. And I never, ever look back at all. I don't go back, I don't rewind on my tape, I just speak it, send it off to my typist, and it's only when I've got right to the end, I will actually take that manuscript, which by that time is a huge pile of 600 pages, and start to read it. And one of the questions I'm always asked is, who is the first reader of your book? And of course, it's me. And sometimes I'm horrified, because obviously there are spelling mistakes, and especially because my PA is listening, like I'm listening at the moment, to what I am saying. So very often there are some really, you know, bad typos when she's thought I said one thing and I've said another, and they are sometimes very funny, you know, in a very tense moment. But even though that manuscript then needs serious editing, which is what I do in the next few months afterwards, there is a story, and there are the characters, and there is a beginning, a middle, and an end.